Sunshine face is alright. The world is going through a sunshine phase. Is it alright? Yes, see the people looking out for lookers. You can be so rich and you can be so poor. You're gonna take a sunshine time. Oh yeah, man. Look at the lookers and see what they're doing. Sunshine face, sunshine face, sunshine face, sunshine face. Oh yes. Take what you want, take what you got. Let me have it. Oh, you're gonna have it all right. And you're gonna see. Oh, when the sunshine fades. Take it away, boy. Sunshine, sunshine.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, men and women. Welcome to Tony Commander J.R. Galpohkpa Chesson Talk Show. Today is November the 30th. We rise this morning to news of changes in our world, to news of violence in Africa, to news of instability, confusion in Liberia, in West Africa. Let's get into my lesson, my people. Let me put my topics up so we can be on the same sheet of music. We woke up this morning with news in Nigeria. And that brings us to our first topic. What is the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, mission today? What is the mission of ECOWAS? Number 2, Liberian society talk of riots on December 8, 2020. And 3, why the stealing and killings cannot stop in Liberia. It is disheartening. It is troubling for the mind to comprehend what's going on in our country today. What's going on with our people in Liberia today? What is the state of existence and life in Liberia today. So let's start with my first topic. What is the Economic Community of West African States mission in Africa, in West Africa today? When the West African State, when ECOWAS was founded in the 60s or early 70s, wherever it was started, this organization was started as an entity to control, envisage, and implement policies in West Africa that would benefit the economic viabilities of West African countries. As usual, Liberia played an instrumental part in the forming of ECOWAS. ECOWAS was supposed to be a conduit through which African nations could grow their products and resources in their countries and use ECOWAS as sort of a marketing system for African nations to sell their products, to market their products throughout the continent and the world. This ECOWAS was supposed to serve as the main body to overlook the production of the wealth and resources of African nations, West African nations. So where does this organization fall flat? Where did it fail the Liberian people? Where did it fail the African people? We see that ECOWAS under Ellen Johnson and prior regimes, prior to the Liberian Civil War, the whole objective has been changed. Because since Tauber, the death of Tauber, who was the chairman of the Organization of African Unity, the whole economic system of West Africa and Africa broke down. And who do we blame for that? Who do we blame for our system of leadership in West Africa breaking down? Who do we blame? Do we blame our African leaders? Do we blame our African people? But who do we blame? So since 1980, the mission of ECOWAS changed. Instead of being an economic institution to uplift African nations with their productions and their farming and industry in their countries, to spread it throughout Africa, to serve as a conduit of exchange between African nations, where we can exchange our goods and products in Africa and throughout the world. That was the purpose of ECOWAS. But when the war started, there was a confusion between who will intervene in the crisis in West Africa and throughout Africa. Should it be the AU or the OAU? At that time, I don't think the OAU were in existence. The OAU were weak because after they killed Tauber, white nations went throughout Africa and overthrew every government that supported the regime of Liberia's Tauber, who had the vision to change the economic status of Africa. So after they killed and overthrew all those countries, there was no OAU no more, because that was the aim of those countries that overthrew Tauber and want to get it and try to get rid of the economic sustenance of African nations and people. So after they killed Tauber and demolished Liberia, they went from every African country that supported Talbot, Talbot, that stood with Talbot against the West and wanted to have Africa as an independent economic source on its own. They destroyed every one of those countries. They overthrew their leaders. Where the whole West Africa was in turmoil from 1980 to 1985, 1986, because we lost track of Africa when our country went so backward and went into war with the killing of our people. So they changed ECOWAS because there were no OAU, there were no AU. So they say, well, the only viable organization to oversee Liberia, instead of sending European troops and American troops in Liberia to die, let the people kill their own people. Let's send African troops there. So they use the Economic Community State as the only organization in existence then to help to stop and diffuse the conflict in Liberia. So they turned ECOWAS from ECOWAS, they attached a branch to ECOWAS called ECOMIL. That was the military arm. They sent all the Ghanaians, all the foreign countries that were willing to come into Liberia. The only people who were willing to die were the Africans. The only people willing to die were the Africans. I don't think any of the foreign military died. They just came there, stood there, watched over the thing after the conflict. But in the heat of the conflict, they sent only African. So we had to suffer from our own problems and the problems of indiscipline of these other African soldiers. So although they helped us tremendously, there were problems on both sides because we're facing the same problem in Africa. Now look at what happened in Nigeria today, this morning. When I woke up, they were talking about Nigeria, how a militant group had attacked a village, killed 110 people, and many more are missing. Maybe they did the same thing they did in another part of like Nigeria, where they took all the girls and forced them to marry and become Muslims. And this is the thing that's going on in Africa. This is against our constitutional rule of law in any of these countries. But it just goes to demonstrate that Africa is still backwards. All African nations and people have no concept of real constitutional democracy and the rule of law. We are too tribal and tribalistic and religious, and we don't tolerate the other people's right to worship their gods, to vote for who they want to serve in our communities, as is their God-given rights. And we can't continue this. So ECOWAS has to redefine its goal in Africa. We have to set clear and unambiguous mission and objectives for ECOWAS. Is it an economic state, or is it replacing the African Union as a military force to protect and defend African countries? Because the most viable role of ECOWAS is economics. And we need ECOWAS to play its original role in Africa, be an economic institution to secure, sell, and provide the means of constructive trade among Liberian and other West African nations, among all of us. And if ECOWAS should serve as a court for West African states, actually that's not a role of ECOWAS. That's the role of the African Union. That's the role of the Organization of African Unity, to stand up for all of Africa, to have African courts in every part of Africa, in the West, in the East, and they are supposed to be the Organization of African Unity courts. to ensure that nations and peoples of these African nations have a final arbiter, which consists of the greatest legal minds on the African continent. And we got to think about ourselves and our viabilities as nations, free and sovereign nations in West Africa and throughout Africa. We have to define the roles of our organizations so we don't have overlapping missions and goals, so we don't have the same things done by organizations over and over and we can't get no result. We have to have sustaining organizations to deal with every aspect of problems on the continent. ECOWAS is for economics and it stays economics. African Union deals with all the problems in Africa, even economics. But with ECOWAS sustaining the economic viability of West African states, the AU can work directly through ECOWAS instead of every individual nation. So if we have other sectors of economic institutions throughout Africa saying about the region that they are located in and their peoples, AU will have a less strenuous mission of forming institutions to deal with these things. Instead, they can go right through our regional economic organizations to rule the continent, to ensure there is consistency among all the nations in our laws, in our policies, in our economics, in everything. You see? And this will make us more viable as traders among each other, as nations seeking development and equality among other nations on the continent and throughout the world. So when we define and set the sound principles of leadership, direction, and governance of our regional and continental organizations, Liberia and Liberian people will have a better understanding of the roles of all of our international organizations and their impact in and on the Liberian people and society. Okay, so this is my take on number one. We can't continue to have nations with rebel groups, unidentified killing machineries in these countries going against their peoples. We have to define our organizations on the continent that will protect us, that will cause these rebel organizations in every country to cease and desist and dissipate forever, be eliminated forever. But we have to form a concerted organization with concerted efforts of all nations and people to free our country, one, of rebel groups, two, dictators. All African nations that want to be constitutional democratic nations must have the right if the majority of their people so desire. So these are efforts we have to control on our continent for our people, for our safety. Militarization of our continent cannot be left to groups and individuals who do not believe in the constitutional rule of law of African nations. So to protect our people, our continental organizations must identify themselves specifically through their missions and objectives, and they must have goals that do not overlap. They must have goals that do not leave the African nations and people confused of their own leadership of the continent. Okay? Now, Attorney Commander Chesson wants to take a break before I go into my second.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings, but now I shine with your reflection on me.
Well, we're back. My second topic. Liberian society talk of riots, disturbances, etc. on 12/8/2020. 12/8/2020 is the day we're supposed to hold the by-election for Senator of Monterado County, for Senator of Grand Bassa County. I don't know of any other county that's having by-election on December 8th. This is supposed to be a peaceful process. And let me tell you all, my Liberian people, I'm filled with joy. I'm elated when I see pictures of Liberia and Liberian people exercising their constitutional right to campaign, to go out and encourage other people to vote for their candidates. My heart gets elated. I'm so happy to see it because it brings joy to me to see people running around and going for the candidates and trying to convince people in peaceful manners. No fussing, no killing, no nothing. That's how democracy runs. But when you have a group of people that are determined to win by any means necessary, that are determined to upset our electoral process by any means necessary to ensure that the Senate candidate wins with or without the rule of law, is troubling. It's troubling. And we can't have violence in our country. We can't have one group of people thinking that they have a right to the Liberian society. Now they're talking about diversions. People are talking about the CDC planning diversion. Then they will come into the hall and put in false ballots while the people fussing and all of that. And Prophet Keith showed the pictures where the plane, the Kenyan Airway plane landed in Liberia with all the the boxes of ballots. And right now, there are allegations that some of the ballots were taken out of the box. Some of the boxes were open. The boxes were open and tampered with. And they were all taken away by the government. We can't sow doubt in the minds of the electorate. We can't sow doubts in the minds of our people. You'll see where we're going through in America with Donald Trump. This man is trying to dismantle everything because he feels he has a right to lead the racists of America. Racist people don't own this country no more. You're treading on your own demise and destruction because we can't go through this no more. We can't tread on grounds that bring despair and destruction and failures to the American people and the Liberian people too, and society. My two countries going through the same problem, so I just get mixed up sometimes with America and Liberia because it's unbelievable that a great nation, America, would be going through the same problems of a fucking preacher in Liberia. What is wrong with America today? What is the problem with American society today? Why is America so torn apart and confused? We expect that in Liberia. We expect that in Liberia coming out of war, no educated people, Ebola killing our people, Prince Johnson, George Weah, and all these uneducated people still leading our country and talking about staying in power for life. Can you imagine being under the rule of this ignoramus for life? Or zombie dancer, or playboy? How can we continue on this path? We can't. We can't. So all this talk about December 8th election and the violence, we cannot tolerate this. Because my first point to my Liberian people, from time I started talking about this issue of the referendum and this election, we got to stop the referendum. The election will not go on in peace. These people are stealing everything from the Liberian people. And their stealing cannot persist with impunity. All this election going on, I want to see December 8th election go off in peace. I want to see it. Because there's no way Darren Dillon is not slated to win Masurado County. And for the people in Basso, you got to know that Boyson God Finley is a passport rogue. He is mixed in things that defame our country and our people, and these people cannot continue to be recycled in our country. Liberian people, recycling of Liberia's national rogues and criminal elements is not good for our country. George Weah versus Eric Tyler versus Edwin Snow versus Prince Johnson versus all the criminal elements from Ellen Johnson time to this very time in our government is a disservice to Liberia and Liberian people. Our country deserves better. Our people deserve far, far better. Now look at this. Alex Snow, Edwin Snow is a rogue. Alex Snow is an old rogue for LA administration where he robbed our coffers as Speaker of the House. Now we're going to bring the same man back into the government under the CDC-led regime. Who in Liberia can lead Liberia? You have no educated people in Liberia other than these useless criminals and rogues, the Tyler, the Snow, the Fannie Sherman, the Phillips, all these rogues just leading on our Liberian people. How can we continue to recycle the rogues time and again and expect our country to be a democratic nation of free thinking, free living, free adventurous people? We can never be, because our leadership is there. Liberia cannot recognize good leaders. Liberians do not want good leaders. We do not know good leaders. All the young people and smart people in Liberia, we still recycling Alec Tyler and Edwin Snow and Prince Johnson and all these useless people that have killed our people by the hundreds of thousands. And you still don't have no sense, my young Liberian children. You still are dummies and don't trust your own abilities to lead yourselves and your country. You got to keep resorting to the old rogues and old criminals who are the legendary destroyers of Liberia and expect Liberia to be better. You'll bring rogues who have stolen and probably finished using their money and need more money. The Brownie Samaka, all these people, you can't leave these old people. You can't leave these sick, old, useless rogues. These people are rogues. They are dirty, nasty rogues. Why you keep bringing them back in the Liberian society as honorable men when they should be in jail and be flogged by Attorney Commander J.R. Galpohkpa Chesson? Spare the rod, you spoil the child. That's the only biblical teaching Liberians know. No other teaching from the Bible can help Liberian people except that teaching of Jesus Christ. You spare the rod, you spoil the child. I will flock you people till you'll come to your senses. Let me take a break before I go in my third lesson because this is insanity. And in order for us to free ourselves of insanity, we have to know that we are the masters and captains of our own destiny. Listen.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me.
So, my third point. We Liberian people keep asking ourselves, why they killing? Why they rapes? Why they ritualistic and murders? Why are people dying with their parts missing time and time again? And it can't stop in our society. Why? Because our societal leaders have betrayed our people. Our societal leaders have betrayed our nation. Our societal leaders are apparently the enemies of our people. So, how do we handle this? Where do we go from here? Why would the killings persist in our nation? Why would our children continue to be missing, to be kidnapped, their parts extracted from their bodies as they're crying and dying, and nobody there to help them? You think of the suffering these children go through because they got to cut their body parts while they're alive. They got to be fresh. These are the things our people going through, and we wonder why. Because we are a divided people. We are a divided nation. We are an unconstitutionally enlightened people. Our democracy is not the democracy of what we want. This democracy we have rests on individuals, rests on people. It doesn't rest on our constitution and our laws and our societal solidarity and unification. Our people are not united, and I can't continue to stress this point. When the courts and the judiciary of the Republic of Liberia is corrupt, when the courts are imbued with tribalistic tendencies, and people who have no loyalty and patriotism to the Republic of Liberia, but to tribal lineages and people and leaders and things like that, there can be no peace, law, and order in our country. Our Chief Justice is corrupt. Our legislature is corrupt. All our legislators stealing the money and building schools and hospitals and clinics and things, universities in their names and not in the Liberian people's name. Then they're taking the students and say they're sending them to free institution and making us pay for it. How can the education be free? Then you steal from the coffers of the Liberian people. You steal our money. Then you build things in your name. How can the Liberian people benefit from that? And we say these are good leaders. These are honest leaders. These are nothing but criminals that make our society a criminal society, because all the Liberian people have no understanding or knowledge or competence of their own laws and constitution. They are blind. You just follow people blindly. Even the most ignorant people like Fala, standing there telling you he never stole, he never went to jail, and he's the greatest criminal in Liberian history. It is proof, ab initio, that Fala is a rogue. He got school built in his name. He never worked for. He never, as a legislator, he never sought to build one government school in his institution, but proud to go around and say Fala school, sending Liberian children free to school. And he's doing it, Fala. What kind of man called Fala got money to build? Even Chesson ain't got money to build school for Liberia, except as Steve. Then Fala will have money to build school for Liberia and give scholarship to Liberian students. And Liberian people believe this thing. That's why y'all will always suffer, because you're divided. You're supposed to be fighting for schools for all Liberian children in your district or anywhere. You're fighting and praising one criminal in your community. Then you're following the other criminal called president, going around replacing criminals with criminals, condemning one criminal and uplifting the other. What made Elliot Tyler better than Edwin Snow? Elliot Tyler is the worst criminal in Liberia's history. He stole the money of the Liberian legislature. He is a criminal. Now you go and praise this criminal over the other criminal Snow. And where our country going? Praising criminals over criminals. I rest my case, my people. Then y'all tell me the killing must stop. Y'all tell me the massive stealing must stop. Liberian people are the cause of your own problems. Until you realize that you are corrupt, that you are part of the stealing of the wealth of Liberia, that you are a dysfunctional element in Liberian society, your leaders will not prove to be any better. Because when the head is rotting and the body has no way to survive, the whole fish dies. And Liberia is on the way to its own death from stealing, from killings of our leaders and profound and dignified men and women, and replacing them with slum lords, ghetto kings, and dope dealers. The time of the Liberian people is now. Attorney Commander J.R. Galpohkpa, Chesson of the West African Republic of Liberia, class is done. I can only talk to my people so much. I can take you to the well to drink, but I will not put my hand behind your head and force you down to drink. No, no, no. If you're waiting for Chesson to do that, you people are greater losers than you ever imagined. The time of the Liberian people is now. God does not come down to speak to us. We have to look around us, look ourselves in the mirror, and see what is wrong with our world. Is the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror competent, patriotic enough to be called Liberian? Ha! Have a good day.